Welcome back to PoPCast. I'm Travis with a quick intro to let you know that this is part 2 of our conversation with children's book author Cheryl Olsten. If you haven't listened to part 1 yet, I'd encourage you to go back and start there. We dig into Cheryl's book, Punctuation to the Rescue, and the fun world she's created around punctuation mark characters. In this episode, we shift gears. Cheryl walks us through her writing process, from jotting ideas down by hand on notepads to that eureka moment when the perfect word or idea finally comes to her. Let's pick up where we left off with Cheryl Olsten. We know that you are an author of numerous books now, and we'd love to know just your process, if you have a kind of a predictable routine for drafting a book from idea into story, or if that process has changed from book to book. That's something that would be a curiosity not only to us, but our listeners. If you want to highlight any of that aspect, we'd love to hear about it.
Sure. I think that any idea for a story, it's just kind of starts off as a faint idea, it's kind of in your head. You're not quite sure yet how you're going to develop it. But for me, I do see the beginning and I do usually see the end. Those two things are really helpful. I do my research. I build my characters depending on where they are. Like my first book, Big Bushes for Little Feet, it takes place in the US, but it also takes place in Belgium. So I needed to do my research. It feels really good to you because you can have lots of ideas, but they don't all stick and you don't always go forward with all of them, hardly. But the ones that feel good, you're going forward with it. You're putting your ideas down. You're doing your research. You're seeing, is there anything else out there that's similar to that? Because you wouldn't want to tread on somebody else's book that might have a similar style. So you're making sure nothing like that is out there. For Punctuation to the Rescue, there are other books kind of in that genre, and I was aware of it, but I knew that what I was doing was different, so I wasn't worried about it. With my other books, it's always researching. It's researching the location, it's researching whatever I needed to know, and putting those notes down. Now, it's not, for me, it's not cohesive. It's not like I'm sitting down and writing a whole draft. For me, it comes in different bits and pieces. And so I'll write something down. I might write something on a notepad somewhere else and transfer it to my book. I usually write by hand. I don't write it on a computer, but I'll transfer it to my desktop. For me, writing it by hand is much more effective for how the story is coming out of my brain. Once I get everything on to paper and I transport it over to my desktop, then it becomes easier for me to go in and start to work the manuscript. And then I can take pieces out. Once you get it out of your head and onto paper, that's the difficult part. That's the challenging part because you're shifting along the way. And maybe you're changing a little bit of the direction. But once you get it onto your desktop, then you can go in and you can easily pull pieces out, or you can look at something and you can think, there's one word that I need to put in that sentence that I know will change the whole inflection of what I'm trying to say. And it's thinking about, what is that word? And that word might not come to me for a week or two. I might be driving and all of a sudden, eureka, that word that's going to change the whole complexion of what I wanted to say comes to me. And so you can go in, and that's kind of the fun part. It's the fun part of putting stuff in, taking things out, shaping your story. And for me, I think shaping the story is maybe what I like to do most in the whole writing process. And then obviously it's sending to an editor and they have their idea of how this story should go, which is a whole other thing when they pull it apart. And you have to think, can I possibly do what they're asking me to do?
Do you find that, so you've created a draft, you've gone through the process from research to your ideas in various places to putting it into a draft. Do you work that a few times before sending it to your editor, or is that part of your process of sending it off, getting the feedback, and then working?
Yeah, I will send it off because otherwise there's no point in my putting all this continuous work into it. if they're going to come back and tell me that certain parts of it aren't working. So I would rather get my thoughts down, get my idea down, send it to them, and then the discussion starts about how to change the pace or how to make it a stronger story or what I need to take out, what need to be more concise about it. To me, writing after a while is sort of like music, and I think that people have read that. It's nothing new. You know, you have your highs, you have your lows. I do think that it really has a lot of similarity. For me anyway,
Yeah, cadence that you have, the ups and downs. The rhythm.
the rhythm. Absolutely.
I could
Yeah.
totally understand that analogy. That
Mhm.
feels right.
So then there's the whole process of going back and forth with the editors and changing things. And again, if they ask you to change or do something different that you don't think originally, you're able to work that out. Sometimes you have to, go through your mind to see how you can meet the challenge that they're now giving you. And that's like
Mhm.
a whole other block to get through in your head. And then you do it and you feel good about it. But it's so hard. And it's still, oh my gosh, I don't think I can handle this.
Yeah.
And then you wait. And the next day you're like, I can do this.
And then you're thankful for your editor. You go through the process of not really liking your editor, but then very thankful for your editor. I know I
Well,
love my editor. He's the most amazing man ever. But there are times where I'm like, no, I know he's right. To figure this out.
Yeah, some editors are brutal. There's one editor that I have she's brutal. And then there's others that are really nice. And so I have a balance. I go for the brutal one first, and then I go for the nicer one. My process is just, it seems a little helter-skelter maybe to somebody else, but for me, it works out really well. This other story that I'm hoping that I can get to after I get all this other back-end stuff settled has to do with punctuation, and it has to do with the time in U.S. history. So I'm really hoping I can get to it because the more I get away from it, the further your ideas. I mean, it's there, it's in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'm sure too, the passion of the story itself, the longer you wait, the more that passion maybe dissipates because other ideas are in your head. And I imagine that could be part of the process as well.
Unfortunately, but and I will
Sure.
try it.
Well, and just another thing that I think our listeners would be really interested in is before we came on air, we had talked about your dyslexia and how that comes into play with writing. Do you want to talk a little bit about?
Many decades ago, because I'm pretty old, dyslexia, wasn't something that really had a name. Growing up for me, especially in school, was really difficult. And they didn't exactly have special classes back in the day. You were all lumped together. I grew up with that. And I think that's why the visual side of me became so strong. But in my writing, I didn't let that hold me back when I started the magazine, again, because I had editors and writers and all those people that can bring those visions to life. But it really came to the forefront with me when I started writing children's books, because the editors started taking the back of my sentence and putting it in the front, and the front of my sentence and putting it in the back. A lot of things that I was switching around that I never really noticed. It wasn't apparent to me, but it became hugely apparent when I started seeing everything being switched around. They just kind of restructured my sentences so they made sense and that they weren't reading in a different format. When I'm writing, actually, I now catch myself and I'll reread it and I'll see that I have to reorganize my sentence. I guess you could say maybe it slows me down, but I've gotten so good at it at this point that it doesn't really slow me down and I'm aware of it. And it's super helpful. And now, obviously, there's so many applications that you can use, like Grammarly. It catches some of my mistakes, which is astounding to me. The ones that even I think that I've fixed, it will fix some of my organizational thinking so that what I'm writing makes more sense. So many people from forever now just come out and say, listen, I've got these learning issues and I'm not going to hide behind it anymore. So I've always hidden behind dyslexia. I didn't want to tell anybody I was dyslexic or had other learning issues. The point of it is one shouldn't let their challenges, whatever they are, get in their way, because there's always a way to get through them. And if you do get through them, it really helps you become a stronger person, become more aware of who you are and how you can tackle just challenges in everyday life.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
A lot of our listeners are teachers. Most of them are educators in some form or fashion in the education world. So, how do you envision punctuation to the rescue being used in classrooms? And do you do author talks or school visits or any of those as well?
So it was interesting to me. There's a platform that I'm sure you're familiar with, NetGalley.
Yeah.
That's a huge platform and it's
Yes.
great. I should have printed off a lot of the comments from NetGalley from educators, because so many just really loved the fact that it was a fun read and they really felt that it was something that kids would really embrace and learn from in a fun way. They can really talk about the different marks and how you use the different marks and what is the personality of that mark. And quite frankly, they might say, what do you relate to? Are you a question mark? Are you an exclamation mark? And so there's just a lot of ways that one can really get the idea of what these marks are and how to use them effectively. Do I do school visits and things like that? There's just no way. I just don't have the
Yeah.
time. Yeah. There's so much to do that, again, it's not for the faint of heart. And one really has to know what do they want to do. And quite frankly, I'm sure as you know, in the sea of children's picture books, there's so many children's authors.
Yes.
We're all doing it because we love it. But if you're doing it because you think you're going to make money, that's not going to happen. Very small percentage up top that makes the cut. And if that's, important to you, but to me, I love the craft, even the awful behind the scenes part of it. And I think you just have to love all of it. There's just so much you can do. And for me, doing the school visits, it's just too much. And it's just not where my
Absolutely.
interest is right now. At some point, I might, if somebody,
Sure.
there is a school where my grandson goes. They've asked me if I would come and do a reading. And I said, of course I would. And maybe at some point I will. But right now, it just hasn't been
Absolutely.
feasible.
Yes. Well, if we can at least get your book into a few classrooms, that would be really helpful. I think it's a great, fun read. And I love the idea of thinking about the characters and just doing a character study around it as well.
So if you were to pick a punctuation, which one would you be?
Oh my goodness, you would have to ask me that. I'm definitely the exclamation mark. I just am that. I don't think anyone would say that about me. Is that right, Travis?
Yes, right on the money. I think I'm the maybe more so the comma, like trying to keep everyone together.
Definitely. I was going to pick you for a comma.
Yeah, he is.
Let's say I put myself there.
Gotcha. Well, I'm the question mark. I'd like to be the comma. I'd really like to be the comma. And I'd like to be the period that's more decisive. But I'm definitely the question mark.
Oh, I love it. It's fine.
Cheryl, as we're moving toward the end of our interview, would you, if there are listeners who may be interested in dipping their toes into this space as a writer, maybe they just do have a story to tell, would you offer them maybe any advice for getting started as far as maybe some first steps that might be helpful?
Yeah. I mean, people have asked me that. Well, it's important to at least have an editor, because someone's going to look at your story and help you shape it. There's different ways to get an editor. There's Reedsy, Reedsy. Are you familiar with Reedsy?
No.
There's a lot of editors that sometimes look for part-time work, and they're on Reedsy. If you're a children's book author, you can put in exactly what you're looking for. And a lot of options come up, and you can see what books they've written and who they're all about. You can test the waters. If you don't want to put a lot of capital, because it takes a lot of capital to actually put a book out there, really print on demand is the best way to get something onto Amazon to see how it works. Unless you're ready to make the capital investment, it's very daunting. And really, if you just want to start, I would say Readsy. And if you put something together and you want to test the waters and you're not as particular as I am, then, using BookBaby or Ingram Sparks. But there's a couple, and there's reviews on all of them. They'll tell you which one's the easiest, who's the most helpful.
We've loved having you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I think our listeners will appreciate it.
Oh, that's very nice. Well, it was a pleasure meeting both of you.
Yeah, it's been delightful. Thank you so much.
Okay, super. Well, thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Okay. Bye.
Bye, Cheryl.